नमस्कार, जय हिंद, जय भारत एंड वेलकम टू डेफ टॉक्स. दिस इज आदि अचिंत. म्यांमार, बांग्लादेश, क्या बोल रहे थे ना, वी वर सेइंग इन वन पॉडकास्ट कि यार पाकिस्तान हो गया, मोदी जी थोड़ा सा लेफ्ट राइट, थोड़ा सा कुछ रियलाइनमेंट कर लो, बिकॉज यहाँ पर भी कुछ करना है हमको. देयर इज अ लिटिल बिट ऑफ एन इशू हैपनिंग देयर. वी नो दिस एरिया हैज बीन इन टर्मोइल, और हम लोग, रामी जी जो मेरे साथ हैं, वी लर्न सो मच फ्रॉम हर. इन माय माइंड she is one voice in this country who knows the northeast, who knows Myanmar, who knows Bangladesh and that entire region, and uske pura geopolitics inko pata hai. So before I say something, I always ask her, because that's one region which is very complicated and one needs to understand it before making an opinion. So I'm really honored to have her once again. Namaskar ji, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Aadi. That's why I like to come on your show, because introduction ही इतना अच्छा होता है कि
नहीं यार, I mean, I read everything you write, and it's not anything else, because आपका जो base of knowledge and the amount of work and traveling that you've done over there, one needs to understand that you know the place quite well.
that's
Firstly, thank you for your time, because I know you're in the middle of travel. So thank you for that. But मेरे को ये बताओ, what's happening in that area, Bangladesh especially? We've been hearing Yunus, तो ठीक है, I mean, he's there, but he's facing a lot of opposition right now. Americans have gone inside. We've seen American soldiers give videos in uniform. I wonder why they would do something like that. That's highly stupid. Um, but we know something is happening as far as Rakhine. What's Yunus's stand? ये क्या कर रहा है? Has he made a deal with the Americans? What's happening as far as this whole place is concerned?
so Aadi, let me just give a little brief on what's happening in Myanmar, क्योंकि कई लोगों ने हमारे पहले पॉडकास्ट शायद सुने नहीं होंगे, क्योंकि जब तक वो डायनामिक हम नहीं समझे, हम बांग्लादेश नहीं समझ पाएंगे. So basically म्यांमार में 50% let's say कंट्रोल है, 50% टैक्मेटो के साथ कंट्रोल है, 50% एथनिक आर्म्ड ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस के साथ कंट्रोल है. जो 50% एथनिक आर्म्ड ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस के साथ कंट्रोल है, those are on the peripheral areas. All the border areas ज़्यादातर एथनिक आर्म्ड ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस कंट्रोल करते हैं. जो सेंट्रल एरियाज हैं, लाइक मैंडले हुआ, यांगडोन हुआ, नैपिडो हुआ, ये जो एरियाज हैं, ये टैक्मेटो कंट्रोल करता है. नाउ एक एथनिक आर्म ऑर्गेनाइजेशन नहीं है, ओवर 200 है. कई एथनिक आर्म्ड ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस एनयूजी के अम्ब्रेला के अंदर है, विच इज द नेशनल यूनिटी गवर्नमेंट इन एग्जाइल, जो बना था जब मिलिट्री कू हुआ था 2021 में. तो एक अम्ब्रेला गवर्नमेंट बनी थी जो एग्जाइल में काम करती है, एंड दे ब्रॉट द ईओज टुगेदर. मगर दैट डजंट मीन दे ब्रॉट ऑल द ईओज टुगेदर. कहीं ईओज वो ब्रॉट टुगेदर अंडर डिफरेंट अदर अम्ब्रेलास, जो एनयूजी के साथ ज्वाइन नहीं किए. आप ऐसे देख सकते हो कि साइकोलॉजिकली मे बी दे एग्री विद देम, मगर पॉलिटिकली दे आर नॉट विद एनयूजी. वो ईओज या तो इंडिपेंडेंटली काम कर रहे हैं, या तो फ्रैक्चर हो चुके हैं, या तो चाइनीज इन्फ्लुएंस है उनके ऊपर. हमने थ्री ब्रदरहुड अलायंस के बारे में भी बात किया था पहले आपके पिच, काफी आई थिंक एक साल पहले. आई रिटन अबाउट इट आल्सो. थ्री ब्रदरहुड अलायंस था टैंग, TNLA, टैंग नेशनल लिबरेशन आर्मी, MNDA और अराकान के बीच में एक ब्रदरहुड, एक अलायंस बना था. ये अलायंस हैड Chinese influence. It did not have NUG influence. It was backed by the Chinese against the Tatmadaw. उस टाइम पे चाइना ये तीनों को जोड़ के टैटमेडॉ के ऊपर प्रेशर डाल रहा था, क्योंकि दे वांटेड टैटमेडॉ टू क्लोज डाउन द साइबर स्कैम यूनिट्स, जो टैटमेडॉ नहीं बंद कर रहा था, जो हुंटा नहीं बंद कर रही थी. एंड दैट्स द रीजन ये अलायंस बना था. अब तब से चीजें बदल चुकी है. तब से हुंटा और Tatmadaw basically means the armed forces. So let's call them the junta.
Military.
So the military junta and the Chinese, उनमें कभी कोई there wasn't proximity. क्योंकि जो अभी सीनियर जनरल रहेंगे, he and the Chinese leadership never got along, even on a personal level. They didn't like each other for many years. And the Chinese have always had a problem for various reasons with the junta. But this time round क्या हुआ है कि after they exerted pressure through the Three Brotherhood Alliance on the junta, they also built bridges with the junta. And they employed a special envoy. So China के पास एक special envoy है. This gentleman has the power to negotiate. So whenever there's a problem between the EOs that are siding with the Chinese, he comes and negotiates and comes to a understanding. He comes to an understanding with the junta also. That's the kind of power that he has, you know. Imagine a bureaucrat from India going into Myanmar and having the power to make decisions there and then, depending on the situation. It's difficult for us to conceive. But Chinese के लिए नहीं है, क्योंकि that's how they work really fast. So अभी recently आपने देखा होगा MNDA लाशो टाउन तक पहुंच गया था और उसको विड्रॉ करना पड़ा लाशो से. And this was a very, very important move, very big move. Because like I said, MNDA was a part of the Three Brotherhood Alliance, which was backed by the Chinese. And it was the Chinese that asked MNDA, pressured them to withdraw Lashio. And Lashio was a town जिसमें इनके हजारों soldiers मारे गए थे.
Yeah.
So it was a very emotional thing for the Three Brotherhood Alliance to do. क्योंकि आप सोचो अगर आप अगर आपके soldiers हैं, you go into a town and they get killed only for you to withdraw from that town. आपके भी एक आपके भी एक authority को question होता है. मगर the Chinese managed to make them do this. Why? Because they were coming too close into areas that the junta is not accepting for them to come into. So the junta told the Chinese to move them out because now they're going into our territory. And the Chinese also started getting very worried that ये लोग बहुत EOs बहुत powerful हो रहे हैं, बहुत आगे बढ़ रहे हैं. हमारे जो assets हैं उनके ऊपर भी हमला हो सकता है. Our assets can be destroyed. Billions of dollars have been spent on the oil and gas pipelines. They have a conceived idea of a railway line coming across the oil and gas pipeline. That they have the Shopchu in deep sea port. So they want to protect their assets. तो उनने withdraw कर दिया क्योंकि the Chinese know very well अगर EOs become too powerful, they won't listen to the Chinese either. So the Chinese also want to control them, and the junta is happy enough to let them do that because junta doesn't want them to come any further. On the contrary, they want them to obviously back off. Now coming to Rakhine, the reason I gave you this background is because Rakhine is controlled by the Arakan. Arakan army has emerged as the single largest, most militarily advanced, most politically mature ethnic armed organization in this conflict in Myanmar.
The communication is good.
We must remember they only started in 2009. It's not like the other armed organizations which have been around there. Myanmar has always had armed organizations. ये कोई नई बात नहीं है, कल ही नहीं आए हैं. KIA पहले से है. KIA used to be the mothership, Kachin Independence. KIA पहले से है. You know that
Chin, this and that. Many groups have been there.
But that they have an autonomous district also called the Wa State. That's how it was wrested out of the control of the junta through armed rebellion and the pressure of China. So ऐसे ethnic armed organizations वहाँ पहले से हैं. मगर Arakan 2009 में form हुआ था, and by 2015-16 they started really, gaining power. There was a big role that they had in even throwing the Rohingyas out. Arakan's also is made out of a young dynamic leadership, which is an educated leadership. वो leadership does not just come from one part of Rakhine. Usually क्या होता था कि southern part, northern part से थोड़ा differentiation होता था. ये जो leadership है ये हर कोने से आता है. Therefore, it's managed to bring Rakhine together, and they've built it together on an idea, on a sentiment called the Rakhine way of life, the Rakhita way of life. There used to be an erstwhile Arakan kingdom.
Yeah.
And that is the sentiment that they have aroused in people. They're very, very popular on ground. It is difficult to beat them in terms of the sentimentality that they hold amongst the people. And they are politically playing their cards right. Now, we must understand this to understand where Bangladesh and what is happening in Bangladesh comes in. Why are people so interested in Rakhine? It's because of the Arakan. Now, Arakan has about, let's say, I told you about the three brotherhood alliance, उसमें MNDA था, टैंग था और अराकान था. आप देखो नॉर्दर्न शान स्टेट में अराकान गया है, कितना दूर गया है राखाइन से, एंड अपने सोल्जर्स भेजे हैं. That means it has about 6,000 soldiers. It had in the three brotherhood alliance. They have soldiers in other places also.
Yeah. In Kachin also some stuff happened recently.
Initially, the people who had trained Arakan was the Kachins, KIA.
Yeah.
Initially, right at the beginning. But now they've become independent, they can work on their own. So now they are giving training to जितने और छोटे EOs हैं उनको ट्रेनिंग दे रहे हैं. जितने और छोटे EOs हैं उनको strategic sort of they kind of strategically helping them. काफी इनके soldiers अलग-अलग जगह में positioned हैं. Obviously थ्री ब्रदरहुड अलायंस का मैंने आपको बताया, अराकान 5-6 हज़ार वहाँ सोल्जर्स हैं, मगर अलग अलग और जगहों में इनके सोल्जर्स हैं जो नॉट ओनली ट्रेनिंग दे रहे हैं बट इतने मिलिट्री एडवांस्ड है कि इफ द junta attacks certain areas of theirs, they can attack from another side, not necessarily from the Rakhine. So they're that spread out. Now, like I said, that that Arakan has emerged as a big EO. It's giving training. It's kind of sprinkled around Myanmar. But obviously, majority इनका interest Rakhine state में ही है. Now, they've taken over 80% of Rakhine. On the contrary, ये पलेटवा भी पहुंच गए हैं जो चिन
And
स्टेट में.
some areas in Chin state also.
One township, Paletwa. And Paletwa, Chin, if you noticed, अगर डे टू डे अगर आप ये फॉलो करो, आपको एक चीज अजीब लगेगा कि यार ये लोग पलेटवा पहुंच गए मगर चिन्स डिड नॉट डू अ बैकलैश.
Didn't.
नाउ द रीजन दैट दे डिडंट बिकॉज़ उनको भी पता है कि ए एक बड़ा ईओ है, ए के साथ हमारा बहुत वी कैन हैव अ लॉट ऑफ sort of lot of help we can get from them. मगर पलेटवा was also a part of the erstwhile Arakan kingdom. तो उनको पता है ये sentimentally, this is a part of
Went straight up to Mizoram border. That region, that river is there.
Paletua was a very important part of it.
Yeah.
So they know that sentimentally they won't leave it. So उन्हें ज़्यादा झगड़ा वगड़ा भी नहीं किया. Also, जब Chin groups में split हुआ था, Arakan was supporting one of them. That's how influential they are. So they have influence amongst the broken up Chin groups also. There was the Chin Council and the Chin Brotherhood. They'd split up basis a constitution that the Chins wanted to make. They wanted to make a common constitution.
Recently, now in the Chief Minister of Mizoram kind of got them together and everything, right?
यार उनकी बात छोड़ो, because इतना डिप्लोमेटिकली जो ये चीजें कर रहे हैं, वो एक एमपी भी गए थे, चिन स्टेट गए थे और उन्होंने ऐसा कुछ, he said something completely irresponsible, and उस टाइम पे मैं म्यांमार में ही थी. I know कितना backlash हमको मिला है, not just from one side, from all sides, from the ethnic armed organizations also didn't like it, the junta didn't like it, the civilians didn't like it. They did not expect this from us because India is always seen as a non-interfering, non-transactional party, because they compare us to China. And जब वो Mizo MP Chin state जाके कहा है कि we welcome you to join our country, सडनली लोगों को ये नहीं समझ आता है कि वो एक एमपी का क्या इम्पोर्टेंस है, कि वो क्या अथॉरिटी के साथ गया था. ही डिडंट इवन हैव द पेपरवर्क, द लीगल पेपरवर्क टू क्रॉस द बॉर्डर, बट फिर भी वो गए थे. एंड एज एन एमपी ही डिडंट हैव द राइट टू स्पीक, फिर भी उन्होंने बोला. तो ये सब चीजें ऑब्वियसली कॉमन सिविलियन को नहीं समझ में आता है. बट वेयर एवर आई वेंट, whoever I met, they asked me how could he have said something like this. So उनकी तो बात हम बाद में ही करेंगे. Then we come back to the Arakan, because I just think that's completely unacceptable. Anyway, coming back to the Arakans, so ये जो मैंने आपको पिक्चर दिया, ये मैंने आपको पिक्चर दिया है so that हमारी ऑडियंस समझ पाए कि कितना इन्फ्लुएंस है इनके पास, कि कहाँ है, एंड राखाइन में कितना इनने कंट्रोल किया. सो आई सेड 80% कंट्रोल किया. द रीजन आई सेड 80% कंट्रोल किया है बिकॉज इनने ना तो सितवे पोर्ट लिया है जो इंडिया वाला पोर्ट है, ना तो इनने छू लिया है, and ना तो इनने there's one little island वो लिया है. हाँ, now we have to ask ourselves कि जब इनने 80-90% ऑफ राखाइन स्टेट ले लिया है, ये 3 टाउनशिप्स क्यों नहीं लिए हैं? जब ये मतलब नॉर्दर्न शांत स्टेट तक पहुंच सकते हैं, 3 ब्रदरहुड अलायंस का पार्ट बन सकते हैं, पलेटवा चिन्ह में ले सकते हैं, 3 टाउनशिप इनने क्यों छोड़े?
क्योंकि नेगोशिएशन करना चाहते हैं वो आपसे, चाइना से और अमेरिका से.
सी 3 टाउनशिप इनने इसलिए छोड़े हैं बिकॉज they don't have naval power. All these 3 townships are they are on the border on the sea. The Chapshu deep sea port, the Sitwe port, and obviously the small little island. They don't have naval power, and the Tatmadaw, the naval powers, strong power. So it's not going to be that easy for them. Number 2, and this is my complete guesswork, and I've written about this also, and I've spoken about this also openly, and this is my guesswork, is that maybe they want to keep channels of negotiation open with the Tatmadaw. Not with anybody else, only with the Tatmadaw. Because if you go back into what they've been saying, and I've met certain, let's say, people from the Arakan side as well, and I've asked them this one question over and over again: what do you want? Everybody else says, ethnic armed organizations say that we want democracy, we want the 2008 constitution to be abolished, and a new constitution where the military junta doesn't have any say. Right now, they have 25% of the seats. We want all of this to happen. Arakan's never said that. Arakan's not a part of the MUG. So, what is it that they want is a question that India needs to ask over and over again. It's a question that anybody who's trying to analyze this needs to ask. Because if you go back into what they've said, they've used the word we want a confederation. They've used the word we want federalism. They've also used the word we want unity. They haven't used the word autonomy. So unity, federalism, confederation. 3 things that they've used. Now, nobody can define really what that means.
Yeah, very vague.
It's very vague because federalism also is, let me be honest, in Myanmar, it's understood in many different ways. They were even earlier on supposed to give them a certain amount of federal status. मगर चीफ मिनिस्टर कभी वहां का नहीं होता था, स्टेट का नहीं होता था, मतलब वो ट्रू सेंस में कभी फेडरलिज्म आया नहीं है म्यांमार में. तो व्हाट डू द न्यू ग्रुप्स मीन बाय फेडरलिज्म? व्हाट डज the other ethnic armed organizations mean by federalism? बहुत वेग आइडियाज हैं मगर अराकान पे जब आते हैं, क्योंकि वो एनयूजी के पार्ट नहीं है, नेशनल यूनिटी गवर्नमेंट इन एग्जाइल के पार्ट नहीं है, वो इंडिपेंडेंटली बोल रहे हैं ये सब. There isn't any clarity. मैंने जब पूछा, what is it that they want? What is it that they want? I didn't get a clear idea. So I have a feeling a group that is so advanced, that is so politically mature, that is so militarily capable, there is no way that they are keeping this ambiguous because they are ambiguous about it. They are keeping it ambiguous strategically. So
I'll call it political maturity.
Huh?
I'll call it political maturity and opportunism in the good way, in the good sense.
Politically बहुत mature है, militarily बहुत advanced है, तो वो ambiguous तभी होते हैं जब आपको नहीं पता है या आपके बीच में consensus नहीं है. इनके बीच में consensus है. There isn't any fragments or fragmentation or splitting of the group as yet. So consensus भी है, articulation भी है, intelligence भी है. तो ये ambiguous मेरे हिसाब से इन्होंने रखा है क्योंकि they wanted to be ambiguous. One. Number 2, ये 3 townships जो उन्होंने नहीं लिए हैं is because of 2 reasons. One is militarily it's tough. It's not as easy. But number 2, maybe they're keeping channels of negotiation open with the Tatmadaw in the hope that they can come to some understanding where they have a certain amount of independence, autonomy, you call it federalism, confederation, something that suits both. मगर then ये इनके जो शापशु पोर्ट है, जो चाइनीज का है, सिपवे पोर्ट है, ये सब मनी मेकिंग पोर्ट्स है. matlab, eventually in time they will be of high strategic value. They already are, but they will also be of monetary value.
Yeah.
So maybe they want to cut a deal with the junta basis that let's have some revenue sharing.
They
Now,
tried
like
doing that with Bangladeshis as well, right?
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, there was this news that any trade with the Tatmadaw and the Myanmar mainland, you'll have to pay some money. And the Bangladeshis agreed because on ships and all that stuff, they
I
had
see.
hijacked.
Yeah, that might be, that might be a form of taxation,
Yeah,
right? I'm talking about revenue sharing. So
permanent.
taxation. So, matlab multiple to go through any route.
Mm,
There are multiple groups that are taking taxes as we speak. So any goods coming into India, going out of India now are 100 times what they used to be. क्योंकि इतने सारे taxes ले रहे हैं. Taxation, illegal taxation is one of the ways that military, ethnic armed organizations keep, their revenue sources alive. तो सब लेते हैं एंड आपको क्या पता कौन सा ग्रुप कहाँ है सो एक एक ही हाईवे में मल्टीपल ग्रुप्स हो सकते हैं सो दैट्स व्हाई ट्रेड एंड ऑल आल्सो गेट्स अफेक्टेड ना क्योंकि लुक एट कमोडिटीज के प्राइसेस कितने ऊपर चले जाते हैं अगर इट्स टेकिंग यू 100 टाइम्स मोर टू रीच द बॉर्डर the
yeah.
prices of commodities go up so that's illegal taxation. I'm talking about proper revenue sharing,
Yeah.
where they come to a mutual understanding. So
Yeah.
now coming to Bangladesh, now the Americans have been keeping an eye on this for a while. Now the way that they've been keeping an eye on this is right when the military coup happened, the Americans announced a Burma 2020 Act, Burma 2021 Act. Basically this act said that we will give non-lethal sort of support to
What?
the resistance, obviously ethnic armed organizations, ethnic resistance organizations, the minute you change a word, the legitimacy changes.
Yeah.
So for them, they were going to give money. They had a what was it? A TPP program, the Temporary Protection Program, where जो म्यांमार से जो लोग border cross किए हैं, जो refugee camps में हैं, उनको टेम्परेरी प्रोटेक्शन प्रोग्राम में यूएस ले जाएगा ऐसा टीपीपी प्रोग्राम भी था अबाउट $350 million बिटवीन 240 million to $350 million के बीच में इनको पैसे भी दिए जाते थे एनयूजी को एंड ऑब्वियसली ये लोग कहते थे नॉन लीथल यूसेज के लिए ह्यूमैनिटेरियन एड के लिए बट सबको पता था दैट इट्स प्रॉब्ली बीइंग यूज्ड टू बाय म्यूनिशंस एज वेल राइट apart from that, they had support in terms of political support. तो एनयूजी का एक ऑफिस भी है जो व्हाइट हाउस के बाजू में ही था. Just a
नॉर्वे में
couple.
भी का एस्टैब्लिशमेंट है.
Yeah, they have establishments in multiple places.
Yeah.
So they have जो diaspora है इनकी, वो काफी इनको सपोर्ट करती है. बाहर से भी पैसे आते हैं थ्रू the hundi system, जो by the way Indian traders ने set up किया था, centuries ago. Those systems are still in place, but diaspora का support है, so therefore offices है, मगर western countries का भी support है. एक level तक sanctions भी किया गया था, but those sanctions had no meaning. मगर what all of this did is that it brought the junta closer to not just India, but it brought them closer to China. It brought them closer to Russia, to the extent that junta ने एक Russian port, एक port Russia को lease किया called the Dawe port,
नॉर्वे.
which is also a fairly important port. But of course, lease करना एक बात होता है, उसके ऊपर construction चालू होना एक बात होता है. And from my findings in my travels in the area, what I found is either or. हुंडा साइड भी ईओ साइड भी स्केप्टिकल है कि रशिया कभी भी कोई भी अपना प्रोजेक्ट खत्म करता है. तो लीज तो कर दिया है, मगर वो स्केप्टिकल है कि व्हेन विल दिस स्टार्ट होएगा कि भी नहीं होएगा. So that said aside, India, though, of course, we have a channels of communication open on both sides, ethnic armed organizations as well as the junta.
Yeah.
And we played it really like, as we usually do, very maturely, very smartly, without antagonizing anybody.
And
um,
quiet.
uh, and you know that I was there during the earthquake, right? So I remember within the first 24 hours, the amount of calls I got from my, the people that I know on ground in Myanmar, saying that we need desperate humanitarian aid. जब तक उनके phone calls आए, हमने भेज भी दिया था humanitarian aid, and we ensured everybody got it across the board. And when I say that, read between the lines. So therefore, it was something that we did very smartly, gaining a lot of goodwill on the ground. Because then after the earthquake, I was there for a couple of weeks more. So I met people from Zagang. I met Joe, former elected parliamentarians. They've made their own Lutos, which is their own parliaments. I met people like that, and also I met local civilians, ethnic armed organizations, people from the SAC, TAPRO. Everybody, I have to say, was extremely, extremely. They recognized what India had done. That we were the first responders, and we, without any sort of judgment, with all fairness, had given as much as we could. We had our people on the ground, so on and so forth, within 24 hours. Like, it's such a quick response, even they didn't expect. So anyway, that aside, um, you know this became a problem. India's influence in this region, we must always remember, when Western actors get interested, it's not just to counter China, it's also to counter India.
Yep.
ये हम ऑलवेज भूल जाते हैं. हम ऑलवेज, इवन बांग्लादेश के सेंस में, हम कहते हैं ओ क्योंकि चाइना आ रहा है. हम म्यांमार के लिए भी कहते हैं ओ क्योंकि चाइना का इन्फ्लुएंस बढ़ रहा है. नहीं, इंडिया का भी तो इन्फ्लुएंस बढ़ रहा है. अवामी लीग एंड इंडिया का कितना अच्छा रिलेशनशिप था. We had very strong relations. Why would they like it?
Yeah.
So knowing that the West was supporting EOs, that उनका हुंडा के साथ नहीं जमता है, that China का growing influence EOs में भी है, हुंडा पे भी है, India का goodwill इतना है ground पे, obviously they will be interested. Also remember that the West always feels that it can control people. It can control rebel groups. It can control extremists. I'm not saying at all that the ethnic armed organizations are extremists at this point. I'm not saying that. There's no angle of religious extremism or anything. But
Yeah.
I'm using that as an example. That Afghanistan में भी उन्होंने यही सोचा कि
Syria.
हम
Oh, Donald Trump in Syria. Yeah.
correct, कि हम इनको control करेंगे. हम once we give weapons in people's hands, we can control them. They are never able to control them. ये गलती इनने बांग्लादेश में भी की. चलो अवामी लीग को तो आपने हटा दिया, right? And चाहे वो कितना भी deny करे, I think the world believes that
Yeah. Everybody knows.
that the regime change was a change that was operated by the Americans, and they deny it. But they can deny it as much as they want to. They don't. I think, unfortunately, what they don't realize, Aadi, is the world is also changing. 50 years ago, the world would see America as a superpower, which it still is, but there wasn't anybody else to counter it, right? Today the world has changed with the kind of social media that we have. So reputation, जो इनका soft power influence था, that can be attacked very easily, and which is now people are seeing them as people who are being, who are negatively influencing places,
Can't be
who are interfering. So ये लोग अभी समझ नहीं रहे हैं कि दुनिया बदल रही है. इनका जो backlash आएगा will not be a good backlash anyhow.
What do they want there? ये जो Rakhine corridor है, what is that?
I'll come to that. So look, Bangladesh, they had this influence on, they wanted this influence on the politics of Bangladesh, because Awami League was there, and Awami League was not listening to them, to put it in very mild ways. Yunus had been advocating himself, had been promoting himself for many, many decades in the States. Clinton के साथ भी इसका बहुत अच्छा relationship था. On the contrary, इसका Trump के साथ बिल्कुल नहीं था. Remember, when Hillary lost, Yunus made some ridiculous statements saying, "Oh my God, I think I will die," or something like that. Like, बिल्कुल dramatic statements.
End of an
Right?
era. Guy,
End of era, end of myself. He made these random dramatic statements, and he just, like, the
Flipped out.
messaging that was there was that he is absolutely anti-Trump. Remember, Clintons were the ones who had lobbied for his Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
तो इसका relationship उनके साथ बहुत बढ़िया था. Now, obviously, अब ये regime change हुआ, बाइडेन के टाइम पे हुआ. Right, यूनिस आया interim government के साथ. I don't know ये interim government का भी क्या मतलब है, because I think we should be calling it an illegal government. You know,
Yeah.
it's an unelected government. This is not an interim government, because interim का मतलब आप 6 महीने के लिए आओगे. ये तो अगले पता नहीं कितने साल तक नहीं लग रहा है कि there'll be any sort of elections. Anyhow, अब जब ये interim government में आया and ये shock victory हुआ ट्रम्प का, he started wondering, now what am I going to do? Because see, Trump does not forget slights.
Sure, no.
He's somebody who's sensitive in terms of, you know, personal attacks, and Mohammed Yunus has had many personal attacks towards Trump. To say the least, Yunus is seen as somebody who is a man of the Democrats, not of the Republicans. Anyway, so he had to build bridges. You know, he did his US trip, he went and met people, and of course, the way to do it is the Rohingyas. The Rohingyas, I mean, जैसे यूज किया जा रहा है ना रोहिंग्यास को as this huge humanitarian crisis without any understanding of their background and the level of radicalization amongst the Rohingyas is ridiculous. Again, it is one of those things. आप अगर गवर्नमेंट में हो, आप अगर जियोपॉलिटिक्स में इन्वॉल्व हो, आप बिल्कुल उनका बैकग्राउंड और उनका लेवल ऑफ रेडिकलाइजेशन और उनके नेटवर्क्स amongst other radicalized groups ignore नहीं कर सकते हो. अगर आपको नहीं पता है तो that means you're not in this light. अगर आप ignore कर रहे हो, उसका मतलब है that आप purposely ignore कर रहे हो. You know, it's so obvious, the evidence is glaring. So anyway, but obviously the West ignores the level of radicalizations and their networks amongst terrorist groups and only sees it as a humanitarian issue because they have obviously certain agendas behind it. Now, coming to this corridor, a humanitarian corridor has been proposed alongside, and nobody knows the exact location, mind you, because the details have not really been shared. जो इनके spokesperson ने भी कहा था, interim government के spokesperson ने भी कहा था that there are conditions to the humanitarian corridor. तो शिलखाली एरिया के साइड पे है, that we know, but exactly क्या रूट होएगा, क्या कॉरिडोर होगा, वो हमको भी पता नहीं. But all of this has happened while we have been looking towards the northwestern part. I have always said this, and I've said it in multiple different contexts, that we have always been involved in the northwestern part of our country, never in the northeastern part. And that's when the northeastern part creeps up on you, the problems on that side. And that's exactly what's happened. This humanitarian corridor has been announced at this point. Now, yes, it was coming. The International Crisis Group आया था मार्च में बांग्लादेश. उन्होंने एडवाइस किया था कि अराकान के साथ चैनल्स ऑफ कम्युनिकेशन ओपन करना चाहिए. उसके बाद अंटोनियो गुटेरेस ने भी कहा था, या यूएन चीफ, मतलब जो चीज़ों में इनको ध्यान रखना चाहिए उसमें तो ध्यान रखते नहीं है, मगर दीज आर द काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स जिसमें बहुत एक्टिव रहते हैं. तो उन्होंने कहा था कि नहीं, रोहिंग्या रिपैट्रिएशन के बारे में सोचना चाहिए, एक ह्यूमैनिटेरियन कॉरिडोर जहाँ से ह्यूमैनिटेरियन एड दिया जा सके वो सोचना चाहिए. Who are you fooling? Who are you fooling? You know, was there any humanitarian aid given to the minorities who were massacred in Bangladesh? Were they even acknowledged by the West? I mean, you know, this sort of Western behavior and international, so-called international institutions, international तो certainly नहीं है, मतलब Western institutions है, their ability to think of us as fools really gets my goat. You know, I mean, do you think we're idiots? हमको नहीं समझ आता है कि ये प्लान क्या है, कि मतलब डेमोक्रेसी नहीं है बांग्लादेश में, माइनॉरिटीज मैसेकर हो रहे हैं, इलेक्शंस की तुम बात नहीं कर रहे हो, मगर we must give humanitarian aid to the Rohingyas. The Rohingyas are the biggest traffickers of drugs Every illicit crime they are invested in. They have their channels of money, illegal money. They are not the ones
Assad,
who.
this
अरे
and that.
आप मतलब क्या ही बात कर रहे हो आप? किसी भी सेंसिबल बांग्लादेशी से पूछो what do they feel, and they
They're
say we
crying.
don't want them. We don't want them. And why do you think they don't want them? They don't want them because of the kind of problems that they've created, kind of illegal activities that they are a part of. इनके रोहिंग्या कैंप्स के अंदर आप जा नहीं सकते हो क्योंकि it's run by mafias. The biggest trafficking of methamphetamines into Bangladesh was by the Rohingyas from Myanmar. So, let's not fool, Asians and Indians and Bangladeshis. Let's not, I would suggest this to the West. Let's not fool us thinking that हमको समझ नहीं आ रहा है. हमको बिल्कुल समझ आ रहा है what you're trying to do, and this is what that they're trying to do. They're going to create this humanitarian corridor. It's been a failed concept wherever they have created a humanitarian corridor, चाहे वो गाजा में हो, सुदान में हो, कहीं भी हो. Humanitarian corridors कुछ humanitarian aid नहीं पहुंचाते हैं. These are safe areas जहाँ से weapons transfer होते हैं, जहाँ armed organizations अपने trafficking के लिए use करते हैं, और इतने ये weaponized हो जाते हैं, militarized हो जाते हैं ये corridors कि जो actual aid जाना है वो तो कभी जाता ही नहीं है.
So what is the end game?
लोग जाने होते हैं वो कभी जाते ही नहीं है. So the humanitarian corridor, this is the guise, but it's a guise. Now what has happened? Now please understand this step by step. The amount of objection to the humanitarian corridor taking aid into Rakhine state is so much that the NSA of Bangladesh, the present NSA, Rahman, he was the chief. He was the advisor to the chief of the interim government, which is Yunus. He was his advisor on Rohingya and other priority issues. This is the department, Rohingya and other priority issues. That means Rohingya आपके देश में है ना, इकोनॉमी फेल हो रही है, खाना नहीं है, मगर रोहिंग्या is priority issue.
That's what they're doing.
He was elevated as NSA when the chief of Army Wakar, he was out of the country. Why would you announce such a big position, an elevation of this man, when seemingly what his counterpart is away? You'd ensure that everybody is there. Here's what I think. I have a feeling that the army was objecting, the chief of army was objecting to it, right? So the minute they were away, they kind of elevated this guy to leverage him. And this guy has worked in the United Nations. Rahman has very close connections with the West. He has very close connections with other institutions. He has very close connections with, obviously, what the Americans want, what the West wants. He knows how that system works. तो इसको elevate कर दिया as NSA. The chief has come back, and the chief has had to, let's call him a reluctant participant. Okay, I think he's had to become a reluctant participant. And again, like I said, this is my putting the pieces together, because aap socho, will the most important person in your country as of now, apart from Yunus, be away from the country when a position like the NSA is announced? No. Right? So I have a feeling that, they brought him up to balance your army chief, and that balancing has happened. He's become a reluctant participant, and therefore, subsequently, they've managed to announce it without any details. अब ये कह रहे हैं कि हम अराकान को, राखाइन स्टेट को हम ह्यूमैनिटेरियन एड भेजेंगे. भाई, आपका बर्मा 2020 एक्ट, या तो जो पैसा आप एनयूजी को दे रहे थे वो तो स्क्रैप हो गया, वो सस्पेंशन में है. एनयूजी को तो पैसे मिल नहीं रहे. आपको अगर ह्यूमैनिटेरियन एड देना है तो आप वो चालू करो ना. बर्मा एक्ट वापस चालू करो. जो आप 250 मिलियन डॉलर्स दे रहे थे वो तो आप एनयूजी को. आप सडनली यहाँ से क्यों आना चाह रहे हो? बिकॉज अराकान इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू देम. द वेस्ट हैज अंडरस्टूड दैट चाइना का इन्फ्लुएंस है, इंडिया का इन्फ्लुएंस है, बॉर्डर एरिया पे है, एंड they are the single largest emerging ethnic armed organization. For all the reasons I have told you in the first half of this talk, I told you the importance of Arakan. That importance lies for the West also. That's why I told you the importance. If that importance lies for the ethnic armed organizations, for the junta, for the Chinese, do you think it does not lie for the West? It's the same reasons that lie for the West. That Arakan ka influence hai. Arakan may negotiate with the military junta. Arakan may negotiate with the Chinese. Arakan holds border areas, the sea routes. It has the ports. तो क्यों ना negotiate करें ये? इनके लिए इससे better foothold क्या होएगा? And because they are so against the junta, they want to weaponize Myanmar even more. US के लिए कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता अगर म्यांमार fragment हो ना हो, अगर वो टूट जाए ना टूटे. See, the junta wants to keep Myanmar together. उनका एक saying भी है something like something to do with unity. That we must counter everybody who's trying to break us up. So they are focused on the unity of Myanmar. US को कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. On the contrary, US के लिए ही only for the US beneficial रहेगा अगर म्यांमार टूट जाए, क्योंकि उनके लिए then to have influence on armed groups will be very easy. They will be able to go back and forth as they like without any problem. They will have access to natural resources, critical earth minerals, heavy rare earth elements. And they will continue to play the politics and contain ये जो region है, which is a very fast growing region. Plus Bay of Bengal में इनका influence होएगा, जो आपको पता है इनका interest कब से है?
71 से 47 से.
Correct. तो तब से इनका interest Bay of Bengal में, वहाँ भी इनका influence रहेगा. See, there is a reason. अब तो लोग बड़ा loosely ये use करते हैं, but if you go back to my just Google for my articles, you'll realize almost 2 years ago I written an article called The New Trade Game. And this is the new trade game. Now, obviously, everybody is using it. I'm happy that they're using it, at least it's bringing attention to it. But if you notice, 2 years ago, I'd written an article saying the new great game, and the new great game is going to be fought here. And that's exactly what's happening. Now, there have also been news reports, and people are saying very random news reports. I've checked on ground in Bangladesh. And so far, what my sources tell me that it's true, that 2 USAF aircrafts have also landed. They've landed from they're from Qatar. Qatar mein, the airport where they're coming from is a highly militarized one.
Yeah.
The rumors are that humanitarian aid hai. But I also know that there were some DIA agents that were on the ground. There have been Americans on the ground. Why are they waiting for these aircrafts to come? If it's humanitarian aid, then I must be really dumb, because I think it's anything but humanitarian aid. Agar weapons hai, then the game is clear. Through this corridor, ये weapons भेजेंगे, Arakan को और weaponize करेंगे, रोहिंग्यास को कंट्रोल करने की कोशिश करेंगे. रोहिंग्यास को हमें पता है ऑलरेडी वेपनाइज्ड है, ऑलरेडी इनके बहुत अच्छे कॉन्टैक्ट्स है विद इन द आईएसआई ने ही इनको ट्रेन किया था. अभी नहीं, during the time of independence also, when they were not called Rohingyas, they were called Arakan Muslims. पाकिस्तानीज इनको ट्रेन करते थे. हमको ये भी पता है कि इनके लीडरशिप पाकिस्तान से है, जुनूनी वगैरह पाकिस्तान के लोग हैं. they've been trained in Saudi Arabia, तो इनको लगता है कि the West feels that they have a great base. अब क्या करेंगे, ये सपोर्ट करेंगे जैसे ये कई और जगहों में भी कर रहे हैं. Militia groups को support करेंगे, Arakan को support करेंगे. They will try to get a foothold. But let me also say that apart from the foothold, we must also not, in time, obviously it will take some time, Arakan also must be very, very wary of the Americans. Because the way the West usually works, they might even split the Arakan. अभी Arakan को लग रहा होगा कि हमको कोई नहीं split कर सकता है, क्योंकि वो इतने consolidated position of power में है.
Biggest fault line would be Rohingya.
No, absolutely. But up take Take your memory back to NSCM. NSCM, one of the most well-organized groups, one of the most powerful groups that even India has seen, the longest-running insurgency they ran in the country. If NSCN could be splintered
I
and they
am
had
an
an
N.
idea,
Yeah.
why can't the Arakan be? It's it's the same periphery, the same sort of makeup,
No, I,
and
I get your point. I get your point about the influence and stuff like that. But what's the end game? What do you get? I mean, is it
you get
fingering
a
around with India? Is it fingering around with China? That you can as it is do. Why do you need to do all this stuff to kind of create another fault line?
see, Ari, I always say this: any conflict is never a singular conflict.
Create
You
it and
know,
simmer to that.
there are
Activate it.
always there are always multiple reasons for a conflict. And in those conflicts, there are always multiple players that can, in multiple ways, manipulate. There isn't ever one
It's
big
not a
answer
single
to
line.
this.
Yeah, yeah.
This is a question of asserting power. This is a question of asserting influence. This is a question of having influence on ground. So, like I said, it's not just only to counter China. It's not just only to counter India, right? It's to keep a entire region under their influence that is a growing region. It is to have influence on Bay of Bengal. It is to have influence on natural resources in Myanmar.
I mean, that
It is,
sounds a little more this thing because, sorry, but the minerals and stuff like that, that's a little because Kachin, we recently see that
yeah, but
Kachin
no,
stopped their export to China.
no, but see, it doesn't just work like that. Remember one thing, they're going for the Arakan right now. That's
Yeah,
not where the minerals are, right?
that's how they coincide.
The minerals are up north. And it's not as if the Americans are going to set up processing units. The processing
No,
happens in China. Fair
yeah.
enough. That is one of the reasons. But that's not the only reason. What I'm saying is we have to start looking at situations from a multi-lens point of view. कोई भी देश एक रीजन के लिए नहीं आता है, वो मल्टीपल रीजंस के लिए आता है. एंड सबसे बड़ा रीजन इसके लिए है इज द इन्फ्लुएंस दैट दे गेट टू असर्ट इन दिस रीजन. रिजिम चेंज क्यों हुआ बांग्लादेश में?
So
इन्फ्लुएंस के लिए हुआ.
let me ask you this. The Chattogram region, where Bangladesh is pretty much losing control today. I mean, Arakan is roaming free inside. The BGP is not able to do stuff. As a matter of fact, there are open articles being written about this. कि यार भाई क्या है ये? हमारा तो पूरा कंट्रोल ही चले गया है यहाँ से. Is India here or Arakan here or America here? People are asking these questions वहाँ पर. What's happening there?
Look, let me say this to you that Arakan's not interested in entering into Bangladesh. If anything, Arakans are purists. They're Buddhists. They're purists. That's their game. Even their fight with the Bamars is that they consider themselves more pure in
Hmm.
terms of Buddhism than the Bamars. And obviously, there's been rivalry in terms of the Bamars have never treated them as equals. They make fun of their accent, things like that. So there is that difference. But the fact of the matter is that they are purist Buddhists. They are only interested in their Buddhist kingdom or territory, or say what you say. Now, with the people that I've spoken to, even these incursions that have happened into Bangladesh have happened on the outposts.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that they have happened is because the guys from the Bangladesh side, you know, the Rohingyas, have been coming in and fiddling them. So they've been coming back and fiddling them. To again, this is military tactics of assertion of some amount of influence. That हम तो तुम्हारे टेरिटरी में आके पिकनिक करके म्यूजिक चला के ड्रिंक पी के वापस जा सकते हैं. वो उन्होंने किया है. They've come and had picnics and they've had parties
2
in
days. Yeah.
correct. So it's like this back and forth that's happening. वो आके इनको नीडल करते हैं इनके टेरिटरी में कि हम अभी भी आ सकते हैं राखें. ये
But
वापस जाते हैं.
the Arakan does not like the Rohingyas.
That's what I'm saying. They don't like them. They're not interested in Bangladesh. They are not going to take the Rohingyas back. Right? They're not interested in taking them back. Nobody likes the Rohingyas in Myanmar. Nobody, whether it's the ethnic armed organizations or whether it's the military junta. If there's one place that they converge, is the fact of the Rohingyas. This wanting to send the Rohingyas back is a jabardasti ka. The Rohingyas don't want to go back. Do you think the
Yeah.
Rohingyas want to go back?
No.
एक हुआ था 2000 I'm confusing the dates, maybe 2018 or 2017, sorry, 19 or 20 May, hua tha where the military came and they said that, okay, we'll take them, we'll repatriate them, we'll take them back. The Rohingya said, nothing doing, you can't guarantee our safety in Arakan. तो हम नहीं वापस आएंगे, हम तब तक वापस नहीं आएंगे तब तक आप हमारी सेफ्टी अश्योर नहीं कर सकते हो. अब इनकी सेफ्टी कौन अश्योर करेगा? अश्योरेंस सेफ्टी की तो मिल ही नहीं सकती है ना. There'll always be clashes. People don't like you, you don't like them. और उन्हें इतनी ऐसे illicit crimes में वो involved है that skirmishes तो होंगे. तो ये लोग तो वापस गए नहीं, ऑफर तो था इनका वापस जाने का, ये खुद नहीं वापस जाना चाहते. तो that is why we know that this US insistence on Rohingyas, repatriation, humanitarian aid is only a cover. Also remember, the Rohingyas had run away in 2017.
Yeah.
So
Why not?
जब बच्चे थे वो जो हो गए, उनने तो कभी म्यांमार देखा नहीं है. वो तो एक जनरेशन निकल गई है ना.
Yeah.
कितने साल हो गए? 7 साल हो गए, 7-8 साल हो गए.
8 years, 8-9 years. Yeah.
8-9 years में बच्चे को क्या याद है?
No.
तो उसको क्यों जाना है वापस? वो क्यों जाएगा? अच्छा, अब अराकान को देखिए. अराकान में the towns are like ghost towns. क्योंकि काफी लोग निकल चुके हैं, वहाँ इकोनॉमी बंद है, people have moved out, a lot of people have moved into Yangon and all. There is no administration, governance नहीं है. Of course, Arakan is very popular on ground, मगर basic necessities नहीं है. वो क्यों जाएंगे वहाँ? ना तो सेफ्टी है, ना तो इकोनॉमी है, ना तो people like you. So ये सब पूरा एक guise है. Rohingyas are being used just as a tool to push forward the West's agenda of interfering in our region. Make no bones about it.
What do we do? What is it that do you think that they want from us?
They want nothing from us. Americans do what they want. The West does what they want and what they need. They don't want anything from us. But is there something that we should be doing? Yeah, we should be. Are we doing it? Sure, at a certain level, many a times I thank God that we have the dispensation that we do, and not somebody like Rahul Gandhi and his cronies running this country. Because what would have happened by now is that they would have sacrificed the Northeast for their own personal agenda. So we must thank our stars every single day that we have this dispensation that we do. We have the military prowess and intelligence like we do, because nobody understands this region better than our military does. And I know this because, I speak to them often, and their ability to understand this situation is immense. So let's not think that we're not doing anything. We don't understand enough. No, we do. But here are a few suggestions from a layman like me. I think it's hugely important that we start engaging with Bangladeshis. We've stopped all sorts of engagement. There is obviously a group that likes, the unionist government, and they are the radicals. Leave them be. Do not tell me that
they are reducing. They're reducing.
See, the BNP is already upset with them.
Yeah.
The BNP
Jamaat is upset. BNP is upset. Hizbut is upset.
And BNP, by the way, this humanitarian corridor, BNP also objected to it, saying that a country, when you have an interim government cannot take decisions like
on sovereignty.
It's a unitary decision. Where is the internal consensus on it? So basically, an external force has come and decided what you should do in your country, and the internal government, which is the interim government, which is a puppet, has said, okay, let's do what you tell us to, so that we are in your favor, and I, Muhammad Yunus, can build bridges with you because I burned my bridges with you. In the most simplistic way, this is the way I can explain it. So BNP has also objected. So now, obviously, all the people who rejoice the interim government coming in are also upset, apart from the Jamaatis, of course. Now, don't tell me that there aren't people who are not upset with the situation that Bangladesh is in. Any intelligent person is. And let me also say this, that they have banned the Awami League, right? Uh, and it was so, it was so purposely designed. This banning of Awami League, suddenly protesters भी निकल गए, protest भी हुआ, कहा कि Awami League को ban करो, International Court of Justice में, इनको try करो, they're criminals, Sheikh Hasina. मतलब ये protest निकल गया, जैसे within 2 दिन के अंदर interim government so, came under the pressure of the protest and banned Awami League, suspended it, call it whatever, we know what is coming. And uh, given to their demands and protests, khatam ho gaya.
Obviously, the
Obviously,
timing was very, very
it was
interesting when we
just
were
a way to
busy.
protest. इनने protest बनाया था just to be able to justify this. So Awami League ban ho gaya. Now I think it's high time that on different levels, and it's not just government to government level, but you know a level of maybe intellectuals or military assets or I don't know what all. Different levels of engagement needs to happen, including political engagement, wherein you need to now start talking to BNP people. You need to start talking to Awami League people. You need to start creating maybe, I don't know, some sort of a reformed Awami League, a new Awami League party, something that is made out of the same mindset of people, but under a different umbrella. Uh, I think you need to uh, understand that this whole humanitarian corridor thing is only the first step towards creating a lot of instability in this region. I think this needs to be brought up over and over again with not just the junta, but also with the Arakan army, because I think the Arakan army needs to know that what is coming for them. Not that they aren't capable of understanding the repercussions of this, but for short term gains, they might entertain this sort of interference, which is going to cost them heavily in the long term. So I think that sort of paranoia needs to build up because it is inevitable. You can mark my words. If this is continued to happen, if this kind of humanitarian corridor, this sort of interaction of the West with Arakan, we're going to split Arakan. Then आप छोड़ो आपका रखीता वे, आप छोड़ो आपका great sentiment of Arakan empire. The West will do what it wants to on your land. But of course, I do feel that the way they move, this is something that they've calculated and they're wary of the West. I wouldn't put that past them. But anyhow, the right offer, the right deal can counter anybody. So they need to be careful.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
I think India needs to play an active role in raising this issue. Um, I think, like we've kept our channels of open with all stakeholders, we need to keep our channels of open, communication open. We need to raise this issue. We need to consistently now on an international forum at a very high pitch, at a very high level, um, really, really push for democracy in Bangladesh.
Yeah.
Um,
Bangladesh and yeah, Myanmar as well.
See, Myanmar, whatever they do, Myanmar has never been a classical democracy, so
Yeah,
to say. So whatever they do, they do. That's the internal this thing. And Myanmar, we've already got an assurance that by January next year end, there will be
yeah,
elections.
yeah.
Right? Bangladesh, there's no such timeline.
No, no.
So we need to really if we want to be regional powers, then we need to start behaving like regional powers. If we want to be regional powers, then we need to find our voice and really push on an international level for early elections in Bangladesh. It is critical for us. We need to be able to identify the people who will support India and ensure that they are in, certain levels of
Power in the
interaction with us. We have a relationship. We build a relationship with them. And if other countries are doing so and placing their own people in decision-making positions, of course, one can never say this openly or this is not a political statement, but I'm not a political person. I think India should be pushing for identifying those people that will be of aid to us and positions of power tomorrow. I also think we need to be really, really careful with what is happening with India and Pakistan. Please don't tell me that they won't use or haven't already used Bangladesh as a base to attack India. They will do that. ISI has enough stakeholding there. Uh, we already know consignments go unchecked ever since the Yunus government has come in. Consignments coming in from Pakistan are exempt of checking.
Yeah.
So do not tell me that there isn't enough ammunition and weapons and uh, more destructive weapons already there. So to corner us, they will use these areas as a base. Um, our We are on high alert every day. When you see the newspaper, somebody or another is being caught, sleeper cells are being caught, some idiot what are they, podcasters, Aadi. I mean,
Yeah, well,
what can you say? So we know that all of this is happening. Why is this happening? Because we have to be constantly on a high alert.
yeah.
So an attack from that side is also possible. So we need to be very wary. I have always said this, a lot of the responsibility goes on the civilians that are on ground. Because when this happens, the infiltration is not just going to be from the northwestern border, the infiltration is going to be from the northeastern border also. So
Let me ask you this about Bangladesh, if you don't mind, and we'll kind of. I mean, there's just I've been making notes just to try and kind of, because I'm going to pester you for this later on as well.
of
But
course,
my final question to you and final segment is Bangladesh. Uh, this whole deal that is done with America, does this provide for Yunus's survival going forward?
see, yes, because Eunice is building bridges.
Because there is also that factor that India is also putting a lot of pressure on America with regards to Bangladesh. वो भी हमारी तरफ से भी है. So
Yeah,
would
and why
that
does
work, or you'll need to kind of
I
just
think this man understand his personality. His psychology is of a person. See, at his age, if somebody wants to run his country the way he's running it, which has glaring problems, where radicalization has, you know, entered in a way that it never has, that the secular fiber of the country has been destroyed. A man who still wants to be in power, he will not leave this position till he dies. That is my assessment of the psychology of this person.
yeah, looks like that.
Number two, if he is willing to do something like the humanitarian corridor, allow Western boots on his soil just to gain favor with the West, he is willing to do anything for power. Like I said, his NSA today is a Western puppet. Don't tell me that his tenure in the United Nations, his proximity to the UN, so on and so forth, hasn't played a role in his elevation as an NSA.
Awful. That is the main reason. Otherwise, he
Correct.
looks like a bit. Yeah.
So let's not fool ourselves that uh, Mr. Yunus is going to go anywhere. I think he will have to. He's not that person. I think the elections are going to be constantly deferred.
Yeah.
For what reason we don't know. Also, banning Awami League is a major indicator that they don't want something that's fair and free. The same, the same pivot that they came on,
They
that
wanted.
Hasina's elections were not fair and free, is exactly the situation that they are creating today.
It's another,
Why is
basically
they?
another Pakistan-Afghanistan situation on our eastern
I
borders.
have
So
always said this. I have always said this, and everything that I'm saying, and I don't mean to say this as a pat on my back because this is a very unfortunate situation.
yeah, it
But
is. It is
I'm
very
saying
big.
it from a point of view that I've said it for so many years. It's unfolding now, and the writing was on the wall. So it's a bad situation. Make no bones about it. There are no two ways about it. It's a bad situation. We have to watch Bangladesh very closely. Um, Obviously, we will see the unfolding of this soon enough. This humanitarian corridor, so on and so
Yeah,
forth,
yeah.
and we have to be very, very wary of the whole Rohingya business, because it's the Rohingyas that are going to be weaponized against us in one way or another.
Us and the entire region, for that matter, China, Thailand, everyone.
Absolutely, entire region, but हमारे तो बेचारे हमारे तो border पे है.
Yeah. It's going to be quite crazy. Rami ji, I mean, you've given me a lot to think about, a lot of notes, almost 2.5 pages worth of notes, by the way.
I sent
So
it to you also, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'm gonna do a lot more research, and I'm gonna kind of cover this and take your lead from where you've kind of helped us understand. And of course, I will have a lot of questions. So मैं आपसे request करूंगा कि in this month, sometime whenever the situation does open up, we can review this because it's going to be something that we will need to address. And I think the government does realize it, and there's a lot which is happening in that
No,
direction. But we need to wait and watch. So all the viewers, guys, we need to raise our voice. We need to keep a track. And of course, please read what ma'am writes. She is an amazing writer and very in-depth knowledge. And trust me, she's not sitting with a piece of paper. ठीक है? So that's why I like her, because she's got a lot of depth in terms of the region and in terms of everything. You hear a lot of sweeping statements. ये हार गए, वो चले गया, वो टूट. ठीक है? Geopolitics is never end. It's always a continuous process. You take a step back sometimes, you take a setback sometimes, and then you kind of create that into an opportunity to,
correct.
get to your advantage, which we've done. We've not, by the way, spoken about what India is doing, because let it happen. It's not right to kind of put out the game right now. But some amount has been spoken on this channel. With the Arakan, you have good relations. With the Chin, you are trying to build up good stuff. With the Kachin, you're trying to build up good stuff. There's trade of rare earths coming inside from Kachin. So there's some stuff that has been taken up. Probably the next time I will talk to her about that. Thank you. Please like this video, subscribe, and contribute. Ramiji, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Thank you.